Alzheimer's disease is the most common form of dementia and is a progressive brain disease that causes memory loss, impairs the ability to do everyday tasks, and can cause confusion. Alzheimer's is ultimately a fatal disease that happens over many years, sometimes even decades. Those with Alzheimer's disease have a hard time doing tasks they once did with ease, and symptoms that are usually irreversible. This disease attacks the body's nervous system, causing these degenerative symptoms. There are 3 stages, the third being the most detrimental. The first stage, there's mild memory loss and a difficulty learning, which can cause agitation and mood swings. And in the second stage is when those with Alzheimer's begin to need assistance in their everyday lives, not including simple tasks, and it can become very difficult to recognize familiar faces, and they begin to become disabled. And finally, in the third stage, the patient endures symptoms to the fullest extent. Unable to do anything by themselves, such as eat, speak, control bodily functions, or recognize anyone they once knew. In this video, we will try and help you understand what is exactly happening to the nervous system, what treatments there are, and how Alzheimer's affects those with it and those closest to them.
The nervous system coordinates actions and sensory information to transmit signals to and from different parts of the body. The nervous system's main job is to detect the stimuli from the environment and to send those responses based on the information. There are 2 systems within the nervous system, the central nervous system, or CNS, which contains both the brain and the spinal cord, as well as the peripheral nervous system, or PNS, which contains the spinal cord and cranial nerves. The CNS is known as the body's control center, where the stimulus information is sent, and the PNS is where the information is assessed and sent to the CNS before it is carried out. As you can see in this diagram, the central nervous system is central to the body, while the peripheral nervous system is towards the extremities or the outside of the body. The nerves of the peripheral nervous system surround the entire body and cover all extremities, including hands, feet, arms, and legs, as well as the thoracic area of the body. Within the brain of the central nervous system, there is the frontal lobe, the temporal lobe, the parietal lobe, and the occipital lobe, as well as the cerebellum, the midbrain, the pons, and the medulla, which make up the brainstem, which connect the brain to the spinal cord.
Okay, so now that we've talked a little about what Alzheimer's disease is and gotten a little overview of the nervous system, we're now going to talk about how those 2 correlate and how Alzheimer's relates to the nervous system specifically. So Alzheimer's disease is a progressive degenerative disease, which means that it progressively worsens as time goes on. And basically what's happening is brain cells are being destroyed, which over time in turn causes the brain to shrink drastically over time. And that's in the later stages of the disease as it progressively worsens. And that is going to be referred to as a brain atrophy, where a significant loss of volume is happening within the brain. And let's talk about how we get to that point. So to break down what exactly is happening, there's 2 main proteins that are going to be responsible for the destruction of these brain cells and neurons that are essential, obviously, for the brain to function properly. So we have beta amyloid, which is one of the proteins that's going to cause deposits of plaques to form around the brain cells. And obviously, plaque is not going to allow for the essential nutrients to be gained because it's blocking their everything around them. So the plaques are causing the death of brain cells, in addition to this other protein called tau. And these deposits aren't forming around the brain cells. However, they're causing tangles within the actual brain cells, which obviously doesn't allow them to function properly and eventually causes them to die off. So overall, as these neurons are injured and die throughout the brain, the overall connections and pathways and networks of these neurons begin to break down, which leads to this widespread shrinkage, which I was talking about. And that's where we see function losses and other issues associated with the disease. Over here in the center, we have a diagram of what the tangles look like within the neuron, which would be the tau proteins causing that. And then we see a plaque around the neuron, which is the beta amyloid. And then this is what a healthy neuron should be looking like. So obviously there's a blockage here that's preventing the neuron to function properly and get the nutrients and things that it needs to function. And over here, this photo is demonstrating a healthy, normal brain side by side with a Alzheimer's brain, which is significantly smaller. You can see there's a tremendous amount of volume loss there, and that is due to these tangles and plaques, which are causing the brain cells and neurons to die off. So that's basically what sums up how the Alzheimer's disease relates to the nervous system.
Hi, my name is Abby, and I am a junior kinesiology major. So to get back into our brochure, I'm going to be talking about the current relevance of Alzheimer's disease, and maybe some of you don't really know much about it, don't hear much about it daily. Well, Alzheimer's disease is very present worldwide and specifically in our nation. About 5.7 million people in the U.S. currently have Alzheimer's disease. The disease takes the life of about 500,000 Americans annually. And Alzheimer's also affects some group of people more than others, so the disease disproportionately impacts women and people of color. Alzheimer's is also the only top 10 cause of death with no known cure. The U.S. has vastly underestimated the public costs and consequences of Alzheimer's disease compared to others. So not only is it taking lives of people in America, but it's also financially impacting our nation. And by 2050, it's estimated that the total annual out-of-pocket payments in the U.S. for healthcare, long-term care, and hospice care for people with Alzheimer's and other dementias are projected to reach $1.1 trillion. So that's only 30 years from now. So down here there is a graph, and this graph shows the federal funding and change in mortality. So there are a couple diseases here. The first one is HIV and AIDS, that's this one. And then you can see heart disease here, breast cancer, Alzheimer's is right here, stroke, and then prostate cancer. And if you take a look at Alzheimer's, you can see that it has like the largest percentage of mortality, but the funding compared to the funding that the other diseases are getting for their percentage of mortality is very low. Barely any funding. So this is yet another reason why it is important that we find a cure for this devastating disease.
My name is Lauren, and I'm going to be talking about the current treatment options for Alzheimer's. Unfortunately, there is not one cure for Alzheimer's available right now. There is nothing that is an end-all, be-all to stop Alzheimer's from occurring. The things that we have most readily available currently are just medications that help delay the onset of Alzheimer's. A couple of these currently commonly prescribed treatments include cholinesterase inhibitors, and these slow down the metabolic breakdown of acetylcholine, and glutamate inhibitors also protect the brain cells by regulating glutamate within the brain. These will not, like I said, completely stop Alzheimer's, but they can help delay the onset of it. Combination drugs that combine these cholinesterase and glutamate inhibitors are also available so that you can kind of get a 2-in-1 kind of treatment. The last kind of intervention and treatment that I personally think is most interesting is non-medical intervention, and this is modification to an individual's behavior or an environment around them that helps lessen the severity of their symptoms. For example, some people who suffer from Alzheimer's tend to get really aggressive or dominant in certain settings, and so a type of non-medical intervention would be changing this environment around them so that they would react less negatively and less aggressively in some types of situations. Our group had a total of 6 sources for the brochure and the video presentation. Throughout the course of learning about Alzheimer's disease and how it affects the nervous system, we all learned a lot about people that we personally know that have Alzheimer's or other kinds of dementia. Alzheimer's is a terrible disease, and we all hope for a cure at some point in our lives to see our loved ones not have to suffer anymore. We thank you for watching and hope you learned something from this video. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.